So we've just come off of grading, and now you've got all of your markers printed out and they get delivered to the factory. They show up, and what happens next? What happens next is cutting. All of those markers that were just printed out with your graded patterns now get laid out on top of your rolled out fabric, and they are positioned in accordance with the width of your fabric and are mathematically lined up so that they're cut to maximize your fabric so that you don't have so much wastage, and the cutting process begins. Once all the cut pieces are collected, they're bundled up, they're kept by color, by size, by pattern piece, and at that point, they're handed over to the head of sewing, who then allocates them for labor. Now, rewind for a minute. Let's talk about the fabric being laid out and all that important stuff we talked about before in fabric R&D. Laying out the fabric is critical for several reasons. I'm going to highlight two of them. One being knit versus woven, and the other being yielding and fabric consumption and utilization. So let's talk knit versus woven. And I'm not going to get into the science of it, but maybe we will eventually, and we'll surprise you. But for now, I'm going to simplify it and tell you that a knit child is extremely different than a woven child. And a woven child tends to behave a lot better. Let me just put it like that. The knit child needs a little bit more attention. So when you're laying out knit fabric, say swimsuit fabric is a good example. Knit fabric needs to lay and stay overnight just to kind of get its issues out, okay? Simply put, it has stretch in it. Knits are very loosely constructed. But even the tightest constructed knits still have to relax. Again, this is like the hyperactive child that just needs to kind of be put in a corner, and you let them face the wall for a little bit until they calm down. Pardon the analogy, but it's the easiest way to explain this to you. So with that being said, after your knit fabric has been laid out on the table and has rested for, say, 24 to 48 hours, then the cutter lays out your pattern pieces to start cutting. Wovens, it's kind of a no-brainer. They can lay the fabric out, stack it really high, cut your pieces, and then kind of get to work. So we've just talked about part one. Part two is yielding and consumption and utilization. So any garment that you have on you right now, why don't you take a look at it? If you're wearing a blouse, I want you to kind of extend your arms and inspect yourself. And after this segment, maybe you can then look in the mirror, or eventually when you change your clothes, you can take off that garment to see how many seam lines there are. And as many seam lines as there are indicates kind of a simple way to calculate how many pattern pieces there are. So let's say on your blouse, you have a cuff. That's one pattern piece. It might be two pattern pieces if you have a seam line and you have a front cuff and a back cuff. You have a collar. You have a top collar and an under collar. So I'm already up to 3 and 4 and 5. You have a button placket. You might have a back yoke on the back of your neck where they neatly sew in the label so that you can't see it when you're wearing the shirt. So just as an example, I'm talking about pattern pieces. The job of the factory is to take those pattern pieces and lay them out in the best way possible with the most efficient use of your fabric. Remember, you're paying a price per yard or per meter, and all of that adds up, and that's considered part of your cost of goods. So if a cutter is cutting efficiently for you, they are going to save you money. Simply put. We'll go more into detail about this, but I'm going to roll the clip now so you get to see a little bit more cutting and what that looks like in person.
It's working out.